I didn't give you your god powers yet, Reed.
Oh, I like that.
I think that's what happened here. I think I gotta do the make co-host. So now you're a co-host and you can unmute and mute at will.
Love
Um,
that.
yeah, if you want to swear at me because I said something stupid, you can mute or not, and then unmute yourself and you're done. But
I'll keep everything unmuted. I have no problem with everybody else hearing it.
nice. Well, here, I'll throw this up on the screen. We're starting with a whiskey that probably, I don't know, maybe some of you don't pay too much attention to because you like old whiskeys or you like the Octomores or Port Charlottes, but Laddie Classic, every time I've tried it, the last couple of years has blown me away at how good it is. And I'm not just saying that because I've got Reed here. I've got Kurt and Harmony as witness. We did a tasting not too long ago with some like a lot of older Bruichladdich bottlings, and the Laddie Classic is still my favorite. So that's where we're starting. Reed, do you want to tell us a little bit about the Laddie Classic?
Yeah, I think people look at the Classic Laddie and it's kind of polarizing to the whiskey community. Again, like a lot of people like to see that dark color in a bottle. They like to see a big number on the front. This is something that's sort of like unique in the world of whiskey. It's something we've been doing since sort of like the beginning. And because it doesn't have an age statement on it, it is a vatting. It's not technically a blended because it's not coming into December. It's still single malt, but it's a vatting of different expressions. This is like our flagship whiskey. This is the house style whiskey, but it's probably one of the more complex whiskeys that we make. So generally in whiskey production, a lot of distilleries have like a certain flavor profile they do. They'll take their barley from wherever, it's milled, malt, fermented, distilled, and then matured in a very specific type of barrel, and then released at different years. That's kind of like the house style. At Bruichladdich, it's all based on wine culture. Basically, it's all based on terroir. It's all based on the same ethos of a sense of place, a sense of people, a sense of purpose. So the Classic Laddie sort of encompasses everything we do at the distillery, but it sort of makes it very approachable. So even inside this is a non-age statement technically. It is our entry level one technically, but again, it is one of the most complex things we do. And just as an example here, so on every single bottle of the Classic Laddie, we have a bottling code on the back of it. I have an older bottle here. This is from 2018, but on the back of every bottle, there's a bottling code. It's sort of 2 digits and then a slash and then 3 digits. And that'll give you everything you need to know about the whiskey. So if you go onto our website, bruichladdich.com, click on the little Classic Laddie icon, and then there's a little spot that says reveal your code. It'll give you everything that's inside of that bottle. So the one that you guys have there, I was just sent the code from Harmony, and that is a vatting of 77 casks, 4 vintages, 3 barley types, and 10 cask types. So everything from Scottish mainland barley matured in Chilean cab. We have Scottish mainland organic and Spanish sherry butts. We have American first fill bourbon and then French Pomerol cask, French Bordeaux. There is more Spanish sherry butt. There's Isla barley first fill bourbon and then sherry butt, which was then transferred into French reef salt cask. So that's like the different myriad of maturation styles and barley styles that are inside this our entry level whiskey, right? Like when you look at things that are released by us that are sometimes on the wilder end of the spectrum, a lot of it gets focused on one aspect or the other, be the barley or the terroir where it's from, the region, the style. This is just like a perfect example of everything we can do at Bruichladdich in one bottle. It's a beautiful thing. Bourbon and then
sorry about that. I was just Evan finally got the Facebook feed working, and I was trying to get it.
perfect.
You can keep an eye on questions that might pop up there. Apologies to the people who started out watching it on my feed and now onto the Bruichladdich or the Kensington feed. So Reed, you mentioned all these wine cask types and things that are in their sherry casks, but this whiskey is pale AF, as one
Yeah.
might say. And like, I have to think that there's a high proportion of refill cask in here because otherwise you'd expect would have picked up more color even in a short time. Like, This doesn't
There,
cross as
the,
overly cask influenced to me.
yeah, there's a lot of first fill. And then some of the second fills are those deeper, richer sort of barrels. There's a sherry butt second fill. There's a Bordeaux second fill. Second Bordeaux second fill. But there's also Italian Amarone first fill as well. So there's a lot of first fill. And then a few second of those richer kind of darker casks. But again, that's a fully naturally colored whiskey. Like there's no color added to it. That's all natural from the cask. No E150A. That's a good example of a whiskey that's seen a lot of exotic cask influence, but still retains a natural color inside the liquid itself, though, right?
Mm-hmm. Now, one other thing to talk about on this, and I think it's a good jumping off point, is like, what can you tell us about your fermentation and your distillation of Bruichladdich? Because I think that plays a large part in what you have in the glass. Like, there's a reason why the whiskey has this nice kind of cheesy funk to it, and these like really kind of exotic fruit tones at such a young age, and it's not from the oak. Like, do you want to give the people a little background on that?
Yeah, a lot of the fruitiness that you get in any whiskey just comes from the esters that are gained in fermentation of spirits.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of the fruitiness that you'll taste in whiskey comes just from that chemical compound. When we're making our whiskey, you guys know about chill filtration, or if you don't, it's simply just like the act of stripping out some essential oils inside the whiskey for clarity reasons. It's nothing but to make the whiskey completely translucent, clear, not hazy.
Mm-hmm.
What that does is it pulls away esters, which pulls away flavor compounds as well. So you lose a lot of those like nuanced fruity bits, those light sort of notes, those honeys and heathers that you find naturally inside any fermented spirit. But if you leave those oils in, you have the bottle higher, hence why this is 50% alcohol. But it also means that you still get to retain those light fruity sort of notes that you would get on anything fermented realistically. So ours is done in an open air mash tun. It's an old cast iron mash tun. One of I think 6 remaining in Scotland of that style. When the first one was brought over to Isla in the late 1800s, it was originally offered to Bunnahabhain, but they weren't ready to start production. So the first one came to Bruichladdich, and then they took the second one. But yeah, a lot of that flavor profile, those light sort of notes will be in there simply for that reason. Like there's a lot of sugars that are coming from the barley, a lot of salinity coming from the maturation, depending on where it's being matured. But those light fruity notes is like a classic sort of house style of Bruichladdich. If you go out through anything from Classic Laddie to Port Charlotte to Octomore even, you're going to pick up a lot of those sort of heather, gorse, coconutty, light fruity sort of notes on the sort of palate.
Yeah. Well, a great starting point to be sure. While people are sipping on that for a moment, do you want to do a little bit of propaganda, show some photos, tell people, I don't know if you wanted to show a handful or one, to give people a sense. If you're not familiar, obviously Bruichladdich on Isla on the West Coast. It's a beautiful distillery. Yeah, Reed's got probably an insanely large presentation, but we only need a little taste.
Let me see if I can find something. My computer is overloaded with brand presentations. So let me pull anything up here and see if I can show you a few things.
Well, while you're doing that, Kurt or Harmony, do either of you guys want to chime in on that first whiskey? I know, Kurt, you chimed in on the chat.
Sure. I think Harmony's typing away there. We'll give her a chance to fill me into, because I know she loves this one as well. I think we kind of joggled amongst the staff of having our staff pick on this one. It's a favorite of all of us. I think my favorite part about this one is it's so spirit-led. I'm not a fan of big cask-led whiskeys, whether it's big sherry or really aggressive casks. So any whiskey that's really, really cereal forward, really spirit forward drives me. This one's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, sorry, I was one of our guests is viewing from the Caribbean Sea and was having some tech problems. So they're on, they're live, they're good. But no, I love this whiskey. I did have a post tag on mine for a long time. This was a great bathtub whiskey, just a beautiful, clean, lay back and relax. Just be in the moment with your whiskey. And I agree with you, Kurt. Like very barley driven, easy style. Even at 50%, I think it's a very approachable whiskey for most people. And yeah, that's why we're constantly circulating a staff pick on this bottle.
I always called it a breakfast whiskey, and breakfast being the most important drink of the day. So here's a few just kind of, sorry, here's just a few sort of picks. If you haven't seen anything of Isla or Bruichladdich, I'll just click through some random kind of slides here. And if
that dog bit my hand, but it was actually relief because Mark was lecturing me for about 3 hours about Isla barley, and the dog was like the only distraction I had while he lectured me about Isla barley.
This is someone that's no longer with our distillery. This is Mark Rainier. He was one of the co-founders, the original buyers in 2000 for the Bruichladdich Renaissance when we reopened. He now runs Waterford Distillery in Ireland and makes some beautiful, beautiful whiskey. The same ethos as Bruichladdich, some biodynamic stuff, some barley trials, things like that. Beautiful new warehouses on Isla. If anybody's been to Isla before, you'll know it's rare to see a big racking warehouse. And it's strange because it's an island that produces so much whiskey, and it's hard to find out where it's all being stored. If you look in the background here, this is Bruichladdich, that's the distillery, a little bit of the town. Some of those darker sort of black colored buildings, those are our big warehouses. That's warehouse 12. We call that the Vatican. That has a lot of a beautiful cask lane in it, including some that I messed up when I was filling. Obviously, we have a big focus on barley. Here's our Saladin box. You guys don't know what a Saladin box? It is a process of malting your barley. So it's not a traditional perforated floor, the pagoda. This is a Saladin box. Rakes will come through basically like flat paddle on a stand mixer, and they will continuously turn the barley. Yeah, it's a beautiful, wonderful place. All of these pictures are obviously hand-picked from one very specific day because the skies are blue, and that's a fairly a rarity on Island. Here's the entrance to the Vatican, where we keep all the good stuff. A few of our partners in the growing of our barley, which is very unique to us.
Reed, I can vouch that there's been more than one blue day. I was there for Fescio in 2015, and the island ran out of sunscreen. And
yeah,
it was
that's
a problem because we were all outside for like almost 2 weeks getting.
We normally get sunny days for the festival. Bruichladdich gets pretty sunny. This is our we kind of give something up to the whiskey gods, and they give us sun back. But I think only like 10 or so times I've been over the island. Maybe I've seen 5 days of sunlight, and it's the rest of it is just wind coming off the Atlantic.
Shall we move on to the next whiskey? Shall we give people the opportunity to sip a little of the Black Art?
Oof.
I'll put that up on the screen here. So this is edition 11.1. Reed, what can you tell us about Black Art 11.1?
As much as the next person can, and that is nobody outside of Adam Hannett. So at Bruichladdich, we're wildly known for being very transparent. Everything we do is about telling you secrets, the inside, the outside, where our barley's grown, the color of the socks the farmers are wearing on the days they plant the barley, all the cask types used. We want you to know everything, where they're matured, where it's milled, malted, fermented, distilled, the ton sizes, the mash sizes. So we've been overly transparent for a long time, and we've been open and honest about absolutely everything that we possibly make. And then we decided that we should have one thing for the master distiller, and that was Jim McEwen, who originally decided that he wanted to do something that was his, and he started creating the Black Art. The Black Art was generally a vatting stylistically like the Classic Laddie, but using some of the older and rarer casks that are inside the warehouse. So over the years, it's gone up to 29 years or so. This one is back down, I believe, to 24. I don't have a bottle here because I'm not lucky enough to live close to Andrew or close to Kensington Wine Market. So I won't be
Well,
partaking in black art, but I'll pour something else that I have that's really fun.
we would have ensured you got a sample if we'd known. Sorry about that.
No, that's okay. I dummied the last of my Black Art 7. I have something else fun here and unique that I'll really enjoy drinking while you guys sip on that. But the Black Art is basically just all the unique kind of stuff. It used to be a lot of old stock, a lot of stock that existed when the distillery was mothballed and it was owned by Beam, White, and Mackay. Just kind of sat. All those whiskeys that were kind of in tired casks were then recast into new unique things. Rum, cognac, sherry, whiskey, whatever you can think of. And then Jim decided to make sort of a blend of all these different styles and something very unique to him. Now it's gone passed on to Adam from Black Art 5. That was his first one. He's now done up to 11. And this is now one where the age has gone down, but with the ethos of Bruichladdich taking over in 2000 about being 100% Islay grown barley, Scottish grown barley with an emphasis on Islay grown. Now we can say we have a Black Art that fits with that profile and that ethos, and that's all post-Renaissance stock, right? So this is all stuff that has happened from Mark Rainey and Simon Coughlin reopening the distillery in 2000. This is all stuff that's been created now post-Renaissance. So it's all sort of along that line, that ethos of Bruichladdich, but with a very unique spin because it's all very unique casks and older stock as well. So if you want to know what the actual cask makeup was, couldn't tell you. This is for you guys to guess. It's for you guys to play around with. It's for you guys to kind of decide on your own. No, it's fun. I'm going to enjoy a little Rock'n'Doll 1.2 because
you can.
Because I can, yeah. And because I don't have Black Art, although I'd trade some 1 for 1.
Yeah. Harmony, I see you're already unmuted. What do you think of this edition?
I really love the nose on this. I just had a question. I know it's a secret as to what it is, but is there like a minimum of casks? Like if the Laddie's like 70 casks, is the Black Art like 20 specially selected ones, or is just whatever they feel
Nope.
like?
Whatever they feel like. And you could see the progression of how they went when it changed hands from Jim to Adam. When Adam took over as master distiller, when Jim retired for a little while, because it's hard to keep Jim out of the whiskey world, he originally gave Adam a recipe for Black Art 5 and said, don't worry about it. I know people are going to be asking for you. Like, here's whatever it is. Adam took it, didn't use it, created his own. And Black Art 5 was a wild success in the world of our distillery.
I still think it's the best one that's ever been put out, but that's just
I
me.
absolutely love it. I love it. And that was Adam's sort of like, I can do this, like, look at me kind of thing. And he is a quiet guy. He's worked in the distillery for a long time. Jim sort of handpicked him as being like just the Rain Man when it comes to flavor profile. He's one of the most talented people in the world when it comes to picking out different flavors. And you can see the progression of where they went. And maybe Jim's was a little more heavy on wine or sherry, and maybe Adam's is a little more heavy on something a little bit different or exotic or a different style of oak. But you could see a little bit of progression. But each time Adam puts out a new Black Art, it's wildly unique. And it's very exciting.
Kurt, you want to chime in?
It's always been my least favorite Bruichladdich expression.
The task, that's why.
The 5.1 is the only one that I've actually really liked and that I actually have a bottle of. And the exact same sentiment you said. Jim was really into the wine casks. Get a big brash palate that way. Adams, he's got a little bit of that. He likes to crank it up, but he also likes a little bit more subtlety than Jim ever did, I think. So
and I like the idea that not everybody has to like the whiskeys that are big wild casks. They don't have to be these big massive flavors in a whiskey. And some of the things that I love the most that we produce are the most straightforward whiskeys in the world. My favorite whiskey we ever made is Bruichladdich beer barley. Doesn't matter the year, anything beer barley is absolutely my favorite. And all it is a different strain of barley. It's not 2-row, it's 6-row. It's ancient grain. It doesn't taste like any other whiskey that exists in the world. It's so uniquely brioche and bready. It smells and tastes like you're in a bakery. And all it is in ex-American whiskey casks. And normally I like a cool cask, but this is just such a unique style whiskey in that it's not like anything else, but it's so straightforward. It's about the grain, right? Like it's about the barley, it's about the provenance, it's about the terroir and where it all started, not masking things or covering things or trying to enhance things, right?
And I think that has to do too with having your spirit really dialed in, like your spirit run. Like you can see a lot of spirits that we love have those off notes, and you can kind of tell it from the front, or kind of tell it from the back, depending on what kind of weight they carry, if they're sulfuric, all that kind of stuff. Bruichladdich never has those off notes to me. Any off notes I ever struggle with Bruichladdich are always because of like wine casking or something. It never has to do with a bad spirit.
Yeah, and the distillation process at Bruichladdich is wildly unique in the world of whiskey because none of it's automated. There's zero automation when it comes through anything from milling, fermenting, distilling, whatever. It's all done by hand, by sight, and by smell, and by sound. Certain pipes start to rattle. You turn the temperature down a little bit. It's all just done by a group of extremely passionate, knowledgeable people without the aid of computers or automation. It's one of the reasons why we're the largest private employer on the island. We're the third smallest distillery now that Ardenhoe and Killoman exists, but we're still the largest employer. And that's going up against some big dogs in the world of whiskey, right?
Yeah. You know, it's funny you mentioned like refill bourbon, but I mean, whether it's refill or first fill, my favorite Bruichladdich are always ex-bourbon, and it's because you can see the spirit. The spirits, there's nothing masking it, nothing hiding it. I'm a little bit more forgiving than Kurt about wine casks. Maybe not a lot, but I'm a little bit more forgiving. I love the nose on this edition of Black Art. I like the palate. I don't love it as much as I like the nose, or as I love the nose. The nose to me is like kind of classic older sherry cask, very fruity. I think some of those wine casks creep in a little bit on a little bit more on the palate, but it's still an excellent whiskey, 24 years of age. Yeah, I mean, these are the sort of things we're not going to see a lot of moving forward because all of this stuff is pre-2000 stock. I think pre-98. I think that was the last year there was distillation before they reopened. And
From the reopen.
yeah, we're not going to see a lot of this moving forward. But, you know, having said that, Bruichladdich is very close to having 24-year-old whiskey that they've distilled themselves now. Like it's got to be coming in the next year or so that they're going to have.
It's coming. We're starting to put out the big 18s. Obviously, we have the Bruichladdich 18 that was released, which is all 100% post-Renaissance stock. We just released the 30, which obviously has some of the older stuff in it, but a Port Charlotte 18 as well. And it's starting to go along with it, with the ideals that were Bruichladdich, and we preach them since the beginning of everything we believe in. It's being 100% unapologetically Islay whiskey, and to be able to do everything and release absolutely everything from a product of Scotland, and then everything milled, fermented, distilled, matured, bottled 100% on the island of Islay. That's something we're proud to do, and we're proud to release some of the older things coming, still following that ethos.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I know this palette isn't your palette, but I like the finish on it. It turns leather, but then you get this like nice honey barley, kind of classic Bruichladdich finish too, which is pretty. I like it. It comes off a little aggressive and tannin forward on the palate, but I think the finish is nice.
Harmony, when you weighed in with your opinion at first there, I did notice that the first thing you said was, "Oh, I really like the nose." You didn't say much about the palate, and that's where I lean. The nose is pretty. It's more tropical than I remember most Black Art being.
It is, yeah. There's like pears and apricots, and like if you could honey tan leather, it's in there.
And I think you're probably right. I think there's more sherry than wine in this particular one, and the wine casks are kind of a back end thing here.
Yeah, I mean, it's this is sort of damning with faint praise, I guess, when you're talking about something in the, what is it, 780 range, but it's still good. It's just, it's not, I think it's not what stylistically I want, like having been spoiled with older bottlings of Bruichladdich over the years, but they're also not bottling them just for me. I mean, and this is something we wrestle with as a business when we're picking casks. you know, we don't always pick casks that we want. We pick casks that we know we can sell. And that's two different things. And, you know, these black arts have a reputation and they've got a following, and there are people that like that style. And I think, knowing what it is, it's well done. It's just not what I wanted. I'd like to see either like just a super tropical ex-bourbon bottling or something with a bit of sherry in there, at this age. But
I would love to see it black arts, just all virgin oak and X, you know, first and second fill
Yeah.
styles. Yeah,
Harmony, maybe that could be the Black Art Harmony edition.
that'd be awesome.
It
Let's
would be
do it.
awesome. But anyway, okay. Now, we're gonna depart the world of unpeated malt, and it's kind of, I've always thought this transition was funny because, you know, Bruichladdich unpeated, and then Port Charlotte's heavily peated, and Octomore's even more heavily peated. But it's not like they went medium. It's not like they're like, you know what, we need a midway point between unpeated and peated. They just went like, we're going to do fully peated, and then we're going to do fully peated with the nitro boosters running.
Yeah. Well, Port Charlotte would be in the same sort of like your industry standard-ish zone of being peated. So when you look at anything Bruichladdich, so anything that has the Bruichladdich name on it, like obviously Bruichladdich Classic Laddie, Black Art, Beer Barley, Isla Barley, organic, all of that is going to be unpeated. So 0 parts per million, 0 phenols, 0 parts per million all the time. Anything Port Charlotte is always going to be 40 parts per million. So when you're measuring these things on this numeric scale that start at 0 and go up to the moon, 40 parts per million is where Port Charlotte is always going to sit. Lefroy is 40 parts per million. Lagavulin about 35. Ardbeg, depending on which way the wind's blowing, is 50. It's always going to be the same. So this is sort of like this is where we are with the industry in phenols. It is, however, a little less aggressive of a peat because it's kind of cold smoked. Like it's not a high heat smoke. It doesn't have that sort of like iodine-y, minerally heat to it. It's very much like the difference between smoking ribs and smoking a salmon. Cold smoke, still going to get all the phenols in there, but it's going to be more like a barbecue style smoke than anything else. And this is a great whiskey for like, again, it is going to be higher ABV, but it's a great whiskey for an introduction into the style of peat. And it's not really going to be anything overly aggressive.
I love that you said that, Reed, because my immediate first thought in nosing this was smoked meat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like a nice charcuterie plate. Because that cheesy note's in there still too. You might have maybe a bit of like Isle of Mull cheddar on there, bit of chutney, you know, maybe some salted fish, like maybe some sardines or something as well. Kurt, you want to chime in on this one?
Junkie for Port Charlotte, probably one of my top 3 or 4 favorite distillates. We just did a brilliant Port Charlotte tasting for my club, so it's fun to geek out on this spirit. To me, this is the epitome of old school whiskey. I love that dirty kind of farmyardiness. I love that the phenols seem to be all over the place. Reed talked about the different kind of peating here. This is peat from the mainland. That's why it lacks that iodine and ammonia kind of medicinal kind of stuff going on. The very, very first Port Charlottes, the PC series, were actually Isle of Barley. That's why they're a little bit different than what came afterwards. Both eras are stunning as far as I'm concerned. And this sort of style, I love it that people get way into the Octomore because of the novelty factor and way into Bruichladdich because it's easy. And that leaves a lot more Port Charlotte for me. It's pretty good.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of anything we put out Port Charlotte. The world was screaming for an age statement, so we put out a 10. It's a nice sort of like baseline for a peated whiskey for an Isla whiskey. This is almost the epitome of what an Isla whiskey should be, considering the provenance and where everything is done, being 100% matured on Isla. So this one is 65% first fill American bourbon casks. It's 10% second fill American whiskey casks, and it's 25% second fill French casks. So second fill French cask is not going to be overly aggressively cask forward, but it does have a little bit of that residual sweetness. The best part I think about a lot of Bruichladdich whiskeys, it's way more prevalent in the Isla barley versions, and you'll get that when we get to, I think, one of the Octomores, the 0.3, if that's in the tasting, yes, is the salinity on them. You kind of like lick your lips and there's a sort of like a sweet saltiness, and that's all from just like that maritime maturation, casks in a warehouse on a hill getting bombarded off the Atlantic. It's a beautiful subtle salinity, and then once you get to that Octomore, you're really, now that I've mentioned it, you're gonna like lick your lips after taking a sip of that, and you're gonna get a ton of salt.
Harmony, any other thoughts on the Port Charlotte 10?
Got this like sneaky citrus finish in
Very
there,
citrus, yeah.
yeah, which is nice. It's not so apparent to me on the nose, but it's really beautiful on the finish.
Yeah, I love how malty this whiskey is.
Oh yeah.
Like really chewy. It's a very clean profile. You can tell this is dominant on the bourbon side of things. I think you can see that French oak creeping in a little bit on the finish with the spices. Like there's more of a spicy profile, sort of licorice, cinnamon. Yeah, it's a great whiskey. I don't know if Kurt's on the same page with this, but like I'm more of a Port Charlotte guy than an Octomore guy, and it's not that I don't like the Octomores. It's just what I think I love about the Port Charlottes is we've seen more of them at a slightly higher age, a slightly more mature bottling, and they just seem to have a better balance to them. And yeah, I love the Port Charlotte 10. I love that series, the PC 5 through 11 or 12, wherever then.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm a big fan of the Port Charlotte, and again, like I love it when it's mostly bourbon cask because it just really lets that spirit shine through.
And the high age statement Port Charlotte that I've tried, like warehouse visits and a couple indie bottlings that we've had in the 20s, I think, man, that spirit matures beautifully. Like I can't wait to see Port Charlotte at like 30 liters.
Yeah, I have a sample bottle of the 18 behind me, and it's I'll probably drink that after. So, or maybe when you guys are drinking the PMC, I'll drink that because I don't have the PMC on me. So,
oh my God, Reed, we're gonna have to, next time we do this, we're gonna have to rectify that.
listen, I'm in Ontario, guys. I have it rough here. I work for the brand. I worked for the brand for almost a decade, and I can't get my hands on the things that you guys can get your hands on in Alberta. So you have it good. I know the people at Kensington take care of all of you very well, and I'm jealous of the fact that I can't just go there and buy things all the time. So I do get fun things, but I have to fight for them.
I hear you. It's a tough life. Kurt, what was it we tried last year at Victoria? Was it a sample of what was going to eventually be the 18, but it was like a 17-year-old Port Charlotte cask sample?
It was the 18. Yeah, because we had Fraser out there with us, right? I brought Fraser out. It was the 18.
Yeah.
Yeah.
2018, the one that just launched. Do we know when it's coming, Reed?
Pardon me?
You know when that's coming?
To Alberta, landed? I don't know, but I'll find out for you.
Cool. That's Andrew and I, when we sat in that tasting in Victoria, that one was blinded to us in the range, and we both were kind of just looking through the lineup and quietly chattering back and forth. And we both kind of stopped and looked at each other with like a raised eyebrow. I'm like, holy shit, like this has to be old. This is incredible. And
yeah, it was problematic because I was immediately distracted from everything else, and I only wanted to know about that one. And I didn't want to wait. But anyway, I digress. All right, Reed, you don't get to drink it, but we do. Let's move on to the PMC. I just got to put it up on my screen here. Here we go. So what can you tell us about the Port Charlotte PMC 01?
The PMC is part of our line of, and I'm sorry, Kurt, about this. It's a line of cask exploration series when it comes to whiskeys. And obviously a lot of the things that we do at Bruichladdich. So we obviously have the 3 brands. So Bruichladdich, Port Charlotte, Octomore, we like to say they all have the same DNA, but different personalities. Very much like me and my brothers, very different personalities, but definitely the same DNA when you look at us. This is part of the wine or the cask exploration. We do a lot of barley exploration. We do a lot of cask exploration. We do sort of like micro trial or geographical, regional exploration. A lot of different things that are key points on where flavor production comes from in whiskey. And this one is a deep dive, a look into the PMC. So the PMC stands for Pomerol. It's a beautiful French red wine from the right bank of Bordeaux. I'm sure you sell some Pomerol in your store. It's a beautiful, beautiful wine if you can get your hands on some of it. And it's absolutely is beautiful for the maturation of whiskey. This was done first originally in American oak for 4 years. And then for the last 5 years, it was in French Pomerol casks.
Mhm.
So yours is sitting at 54.5%, I think.
So, Harmony, why don't I kick it off with you here, since Reed's got something different in front of him.
Yeah.
What are you getting on the nose with this?
It's pretty floral, actually. I was not expecting that, but there's also lots of melon. There's still like that nice coastal kind of like saltiness to it. Signature to the other Bruichladdich. I'm getting like that honey and leather that I found in the Port Charlotte as well, but definitely more floral, and the spices are a little bit different. Haven't quite nailed them down, but different spice.
Well,
If you just put the word marzipan in there somewhere, it would have been like I was listening to the brand tell us about it, because those are like all those things that you just said, where it's like honey and leather and melon and pear. And I think when we first tried it, that was the exact same thing that was told us in a boardroom on Isla, was this is what we taste, and you just nailed every single one of them. So you're hired.
Awesome. Yeah, no, it is though. It's a lot of those things, and the palate, you get a little bit more of that smoke and a little bit more of those tannins that come through for the wine. But overall, I think it's definitely one of the more balanced wine casks that I've had lately.
So Reed, we probably should have forewarned you before the tasting. You're facing a strong headwind of wine cask skeptics here at
Okay,
Kensington.
that's fine. That's okay.
And that's not to say that we haven't on occasions found some that we really liked. And I have to admit myself, I quite like this one. I think it's got a nice balance. It's got nice flavors. It's fruity. The wine's kind of like, it's a gentle, subtle influence on it's not drowning things out. It is a little bit peppery and a little earthy on the spices, but it's got a nice balance to it. I am dying to know what Kurt thinks of this one though, because like Kurt, if there's a hater for wine casks at Kensington Wine Market, it's Kurt. I'm, to be honest, not far off of that, but I'm, as I said, a bit more forgiving.
Let's qualify that though, in saying that I do believe wine casks are getting better all the time now. They're learning how to treat them better. We're not getting that funkiness as much. So the future wine casks will be okay, I think. And we also have to admit that we are way outside the norm on this, right? Like wine casks,
Very much.
like crazy for us. People love them. We're not the usual target for those, and the others outnumber us multifold. This one hurts my heart. I love Port Charlotte, like I said. This to me is like it's like Charlie Brown lining up to kick the football, and then Lucy rips it out from under him. You know?
Oh no!
And then the palate is just like, I fall on my ass. Doesn't work for me, man.
That's okay. And that's the thing, is like wine cask, it wasn't done a lot. It was sherry and it was port, ex-American bourbon cask. It was ex-American bourbon cask because they were cheap and they're affordable. And there's a ton of ex-American bourbon casks because the laws are making bourbon is you can only use a cask once. Therefore, there's a ton of bourbon casks around. Same reason that Canadian whiskeys use it, tequilas use it, rums use it, Irish use it. Everybody uses ex-American bourbon casks except for really cognac. And then port and sherry. Wines, yeah, fortified, sure. Very sweet, absolutely. The introduction of like sort of historic brand wine casks is sort of a new thing, relatively new in the world of single malt, considering how old the world of single malt is. And it's the best part about it is it's always going to be an evolution. It's always going to change. It's always going to be different. And depending on where you're sourcing your wine from, the producers you're sourcing them from, the style of wine, the region, whether your cask was broken down and then put back together, was it flat packed and then sent to a cooper and put back together again, or was it sent whole with a little bit of liquid still inside? Where's the quality come from? It's always going to change, and it's always going to be an evolution. And that's what we absolutely love about whiskey. We never want our whiskey to taste the same. It shouldn't. Our Classic Laddie is the same idea every time, but it's a different technical genetic makeup of whiskey. The Black Art is a living, breathing thing. It'll change all the time. The Port Charlotte, the Isle barleys, the beer barleys, everything changes based on microclimates, the weather, the geography, the soil type, the pH level of the soil, the climate, how much rain we got, how much heat and sun we got, how much evaporation. Everything into these are always going to be different. And so when we put out a wine cask exploration thing, will we do another Pomerol cask Port Charlotte? Maybe, but it's going to be different than this one. And that's the fun thing about, I think, Bruichladdich is it's never going to be boring. It's never going to be linear. It's never going to be flat. There should be peaks and valleys to your whiskey drinking experience, not only in just in your one glass, peaks and valleys of flavor, but peaks and valleys of different styles and different ideas and things like that. It stems from the world of wine, right? A 1995 Bordeaux versus a 2000 Bordeaux from the same producer, from the same vine, the same vineyard, the same everything, but different flavor profile. Whiskey should be like that too. It should always be changing. It should always be different. It should always make you feel different things or think different things. So certain years are going to be better than others. Certain finishes are going to be different than others. And that's, again, it's the world of whiskey. We should all be choosing things that we like ourselves, and nobody needs to be confined to convention. And that's the one thing, like, we've never been a conventional distillery, and we never want to follow the rules of convention. And we don't think anybody drinking whiskey should be following those rules of convention either. We don't make whiskey for everybody, and not every whiskey is for everybody, right? Just because you like one thing and I like another, there's not a big deal about that. We're 100% okay with it.
Yeah. And there's a couple things there that I really resonated with. I like this. It's my favorite of those experimental casks that we've seen so far from Port Charlotte. I think it's the best one yet. It loses me a tiny bit on the finish, but the nose and the palate, I actually quite like it. But I guess the funny thing with Bruichladdich is that Bruichladdich is almost, to use one of the words Mark Renier used to overuse, like, it's almost so much of a renegade that I like the stuff it makes that is more mainstream, because it just shows how good, and that's the opposite for most other distilleries. Like, my favorite bottlings are like Port Charlotte 10, Laddie Classic, and I can't think of another distillery, and maybe this is the highest compliment I can pay you guys, is I can't think of another distillery where I think their core bottlings are the best things that they're putting out there. So,
and that's, look at it in the world of beer. When people look at like breweries and things like that, a lot of breweries are putting out these wild, funky IPAs and sours and this and that, which is fine, but it's judged off a lager, and a lager is tough to make. An IPA, you throw a bunch of stuff in a vat, and whatever comes out, that's what you get. When you're making a lager, that's a science. That's like baking. That's a very like fine-tuned skill. That's what you should be judged on. And that's sort of the house style of Bruichladdich. Has those, like the Classic Laddie, the Isle barley, the regular Port Charlotte 10, the Octomore 0.1 series. Those are very like, this is us. This is the house style. We're going to take these ideas, and then we're going to go in weird different directions with them. So we'll take the Classic Laddie and we'll go in the cask direction with the Black Art. We'll take the Classic Laddie ideal and ethos, and we'll go in the Provenance sort of terroir version with something like a biodynamic, or with an organic, or a beer, or Isle barley. And then Port Charlotte does the same. You take your regular control whiskey, which we would call our control, and then you go in different sort of directions based on if it's barley type exploration, if it's cask type exploration, or if it's age and maturation expiration, right? And that's do you have like kind of spokes out from each one. But the core sort of pillar of Bruichladdich, if you have sort of like a tent, the core tent pole is that classic house style with other little things kind of holding it up.
It almost begs the question why there was never a Port Charlotte Classic and an Octomore Classic.
I think you'll see like this is now the Port Charlotte 10 will be
that's
and the 0.1 series will be that. So this will be like the standard, I think, the standard style. The Port Charlotte 10 will be the standard style for Port Charlotte. Again, those cask finishes will likely change for each release. It's not always going to be ex-American, ex-American, then French wine. But there's always going to be that same sort of straightforward style. And I think that's where you get with the Classic Laddie, Port Charlotte 10, Octomore 0.1. That'll always be sort of your control whiskeys. And then they'll stem out from there.
All right. Well, speaking of Octomore, I think we should probably move on to the first of three. So we're going to start with the Octomore 1411. 14.1. Good Lord. I can still remember way back when, children, when Octomore 1.1 was released.
I have a bottle that's somewhere here behind me, but it's one of those glass bottles with a piece of masking tape on it.
I can see the redder still behind you.
Yeah, there's one of those too somewhere. Yeah.
All right, Octomore 11.1. What can you tell us about this one, Reed?
14.1.
14. Why do I keep saying 11? I think it's
maybe you just love 11.1.
No, I think it's just that the black
art,
the numbering. You know, maybe that's the confusing thing is the black art's on a different numbering program than Octomore, and my brain is apparently failing me at this.
That's
stage.
Fair. So the Octomore, again, this is a polarizing whiskey. This is a whiskey that people either love it or hate it. And it's very unique in the sense that it is heavily peated. So this one I believe is 128.9 parts per million. Yeah, 128.9 parts per million. It is 59.6%, and it is 5 years old. So right off the bat, that sounds terrifying. Any whiskey, when he comes in and says, "Oh, you're nearly 60% alcohol," and you're 128 parts per million, that's terrifying. And then in the world now, currently, if you say this is a 5-year-old whiskey, people immediately take a step back and they get worried because 5 years to somebody in the world of whiskey sounds like a very young whiskey. I can tell you with Octomore, it's a very niche balancing act. In the world of heavily peated whiskeys, you run the risk of one specific style and direction of flavor, and that is sort of like dry and bitter smoke. That's where a lot of peat kind of is dry and it's tannic, it's smoky. That's sort of where it is. In a lot of overly oaked whiskeys, you also run the risk of running into those dry, tannic, bitter sort of notes. So if we take this and we balance it out with a younger spirit, something that showcases the grain and showcases the barley, it still has that cereal grain, it still has those sugars, it still has that sweetness. That's where the balance comes into play. So you have these certain sided notes on the very far end of the spectrum that are aggressive and they're going to get you. But then you have these other notes on the far other side that are light and sweet and sugary and a little bit salinic, honey, heather, gorse, all these sort of like local regional style flavors. And it works so well together. So this is the 0.1. 0.1 always means it's going to be ex-American whiskey casks. Okay, so that's always going to be it. This is our control whiskey when it comes to Octomore. And Octomore is always going to be sort of different along the line, 0.1, 0.2, 0.3. If we make a 0.4 that year, a 0.4. But the 0.1 is always going to be the one you can judge off of other years, because it's always going to be the same maturation profile for the most part. Around the same years, normally they're 5 years old. We've done 10, we've done 8, we've done 12, we've done longer. We've done 3, but 5 years old is kind of the standard now for Octomore. And it's an absolute beautiful, beautiful, beautiful balance of these flavors. It's one of my favorite things in the entire world is seeing people experience Octomore for the first time. They hear the numbers, they get terrified, and then you take a sip and you start to understand where it comes from, where the balance comes from.
I love how frankly how drinkable this is at almost 60%. It's sweet, it's fruity, it's malty and smoky, and none of those things are somehow out of balance. That salinity, that maritime note comes in on the finish with some ashy peat. It's a beautiful balance. I really like it, and well, Kurt, I'll pick on you first this time. Do you want to share your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm a Port Charlotte guy more than an Octomore guy, but I adore Octomore as well. I think I said early on, this is one of my favorite distilleries, so this one's an easy one for me. Octomore to me is this like, it's actually a delicate whiskey. The only thing that's really big about it is the smoke. Like otherwise, think about what's in the glass. It's really kind of sharp. It's really finely tuned. And the only aggression from it is just like volume. It's like a classical piece of music, but turned up to deafening volumes. Like it's really, really good. It's really
I love that. I love that metaphor for it. Classical music turned up to deafening volumes. That's 100% it. We always described it as an iron fist and a velvet glove. But that's what it is, right? Like there are certain aspects of it, and I talked about peaks and valleys of flavor earlier, and this goes to like opposite ends of the spectrum on it. So you have very, very aggressive sort of top notes, and then you have this underlying flavor of just like delicate, sweet, floral, citrusy that kind of brings everything into that realm of balance, and it works out so well together. And as we go through the lineup here, and you see sort of the different influence, I'm sorry the next one's going to have a little wine in it, but it's again that balance is gonna meet really well. And Octomore will forever be one of my favorite things in the world. It's a great example of how special a younger whiskey can be. It's a great example of how special something with an age statement of 5 years old or previous editions 3 years old can really showcase and really shine. Because again, it's not about the most important thing in the world is that cask. It's the most important thing we start with, which is like the cereal grain, the barley, the origins, the provenance, the overall flavor of the house, and then take those flavors and then just sort of build upon them as we go, right?
Just to kind of chime in, but add on to that is, I like into what Kurt said. I would love to see more of that straight bourbon cask style, but I'd like to see it at 10 years of age again. Like Harmony commented earlier in the chat how she misses the Octomore 10. I mean, that Octomore 10 was phenomenal. And it was, we talk about how it's huge, but it's not that obnoxious. And part of that comes down to distillation. But I think it comes down even more so with time. When you get to the 10-year-old Octomore is a completely different beast from Octomore at 5 years of age. Octomore at 5 years of age is more brash, and it's still lovely, but I love those Octomore 10s too.
Yeah, we've done a few of those. The Octomore 10 first edition, the Octomore 10, the 10 series, the Octomore 10 second edition, the Octomore 10 again. There's been a few of them. But no, they're beautiful, and again, that's another thing where it's always going to be different, and it's always something new to find, and you find those things that you like about it, and you find those additions that have something that resonates with you, and whether it's the maturation style of it, whether it's the what region of the island the barley came from, whether it's the excessive casking or not, those are the sort of things where you get to pick and choose your adventure when it comes to whiskey and find those things that work for you, right?
Harmony, did you want to chime in on this one?
Sure. Initially, I was going to say how like creamy and sweet the nose was on this, but it's been sitting for a while, so the smoke is starting to take over that creamy lush nose profile, but I still am getting kind of like your pear and melon fruit salad with those nice, like the nice sweetness, but then you get that nice, like Andrew said, that ashy smoke in there. To me, it kind of reminds me on the finish a little bit if you like burnt a sugar cookie, and you get those nice, I've burned a lot of things in my baking life, so burnt sugar cookies here, but a
That
nice,
Maillard reaction sort of thing, that sort of
yeah,
made bake flavor for where things start to really just sort of like caramelize. Again, like
yeah,
even if you take like a little bit on your finger and like just let it evaporate on your hand, if you smell that after the alcohol is burned off, that's just pure, sweet, beautiful barley. It's bread. It's a
yeah.
phenomenal experience, and that's when you get like to the core of the flavor is everything in there, and then after that, it's the smoke starts to take over, and a little bit of heat comes into the back of the palate.
Yeah, no, it's the .1 series is definitely, I think, special because of its clean sort of naked profile.
Yeah, it's a
All
nice
right.
jumping off point for things that we do, and then obviously that brings you into the .2.
I was going to say, speaking of jumping off, now before we go too far down the road on this one, and this is not a judgmental statement, but is there a story behind the salmon colored tin on 14.2 this time?
No, it's just different. I remember when I first saw it a couple years ago, and they put up the big. I think I was on Isla with the rest of the people that do my job around the world, and they kind of did like here's the release of what's coming, and then these tins came up, and they were like there was one that was kind of like shimmery goldish, and one that was sort of like that salmon color, and things like, and almost just went whoa, because they were all black except for the .3 were white. I think now this is an easier way for people to differentiate where things are coming from and sort of like where they stand in the line of things. Because as you go through Octomore, and I get this is the most confusing thing in the world with Bruichladdich, is because I love it and I talk about it because everything changes and everything's different and everything's has an idea and a purpose until it doesn't. And with Octomore, it's the same way. It was .1 will always be X American whiskey cask. .2 will always be wine cask finish, but it'll be from that same malting as the .1. So it'll have the same phenol, same ppm sort of thing, and then until it doesn't. And .3 is always going to be Octomore of Octomore. That's the Isla 100% Isla grown barley, Octomore. And .4 is always going to be virgin oak if we make a .4. But I think now, because they did black tin, white tin, black tin in that series, maybe they're going to start to do black tin, rose tin, white tin, gold tin. I don't know. They will until they don't, but we'll find out what we do next because there's no real story. It's different for the sake of being different, I think.
Do you think they'll be going for the Brooks Brothers pastel color of the season, like every year? Like, because those things probably change.
I'm pretty sure Pantone 333, which is the color of all seasons. Pantone paint your bathrooms, Pantone 333.
I was just gonna say that, Reed. That color's been voted like one of the most top colors for your home for neutral spaces.
That has?
Yeah, that like
Wow.
tealish, bluish green. It's like recommended for every bathroom and small room in a house. Yeah.
That's an aggressive color to wake up to every day.
It's aggressive, but it's also somehow cheerful. I mean,
yeah.
It's not far off. I know if anyone's into bicycles, but I think it's Bianchi, like the Italian company, like all their bikes are kind of almost that same sort of aquamarine blue. And like, there's people that totally dig that. And like, I've been in places I probably that have like wood cabinets that are the color of that. And they're just an accent. There's other things, but I don't know, it kind of feels warm and homey. So I'm not slagging that at all. It's funny because as you said, like we get trained as retailers and consumers to expect things to go a certain way. And then all of a sudden you get a, off salmon colored tin. And it's like,
Yeah.
where did that come from?
Well,
But anyway.
the same place that the aquamarine color came from, which was the minds of the people at Bruichladdich. And you know what? A lot of people hated it when we first did it, and now they love it. So we're changing the game, hopefully.
All right.
Yeah, on to the point two is what you guys have, right?
Yeah, Harmony, do you want to chime in on this one? Do you want to go first, or did you already?
Yeah, I like the tin because it's pinkish and it's my favorite color. So
Oh, the whiskey.
oh, I mean the whiskey is
Talk
a
about
beautiful
the
color
whiskey.
as well. And I also really like Amarone wines. So tons of like dark red fruit on this. Black, like plums and cherries and nice
It's like somebody
spices.
set a bag of strawberry Twizzlers on fire.
Why would you waste perfectly good Twizzlers?
Well, I'm just saying, like, because you've got the strawberry Twizzlers, you've got the plastic bag, and it's on fire. So, it's quite like it's very drinkable. I mean, for me, I struggle with this because I find like the palate structure of the Amarone is just it's not consistent, but there's no flaws. I mean, I think one of the things. So, Reed, when my staff and I get cranky about wine casks, the main reason we get cranky is because a lot of them are like undrinkable. Like they're so tannic, this is very drinkable. There's no flaws in this. It's just it's like a stylistic thing to me. And so I like it. If someone offered me a drink of it, I would not turn it down. But if they're like, or I've got 14.1, I'd be like 14.1.
You guys should change the name of Kensington Wine Market to Kensington Wine, but not Wine Casks Market.
You know what? There's been t-shirt ideas floated before. Wine cask skeptics is one of them. So
that's okay, and that's fine. There have been some that we've done. The 6.3 Octomore, that was a very, I legally am not allowed to say the name of the producer, but that was a very famous Sauternes cask producer, and it was.
I can say
I didn't say anything. I didn't say anything.
You said nothing.
And it was a phenomenal whiskey, and that is a phenomenal cask. I think a lot of sweet wine casks people like a lot more. A lot of Sauternes people like, Riessalts people like. A lot of things kind of from like the south of France people are into. Big Bordeaux, dry tannic Bordeaux and things like that have that polarizing sort of structure to them. But I think a lot of what is like a nice gateway wine cask for people is those sweet wine casks, right? A Marsala cask or something like that, right? A Madeira cask, which is unique but phenomenal because it's very honey forward, sort of citrus forward notes.
Yeah. Kurt, go gentle. Be gentle.
Kurt, I swear, don't do it to me.
I like the tin.
The hesitation is everything.
Kurt, I'll e-transfer you now for the good review.
It tastes like Lecheg. Yeah, the palate's not working for me. And the thing is, we've seen Octomores in wine casks that I've adored. 4.2 and 2.2, Orpheus and Comus were both incredible.
Comus, yeah.
I really, really love those. I had some Octomore warehouse a few months back. I think a 19-year-old in wine that was really quite good. This just kind of tastes like Lecheg to me. So I'm not going to say good, bad, or indifferent. I'm just going to say it tastes like Lecheg and we'll leave it at that.
Oh, Kurt.
That's okay.
That's hurtful because I love Lecheg. It's hurtful.
Yeah, and you know how Kurt feels about Lecheg.
Actually, I was drinking this, and part of the joy that it sparked in me is, I wonder what Kurt thinks about this. Knowing that he won't like it.
Now we know. All right. Well, we got one more to go. I mean, I have high expectations of this last one because I've always loved. I love almost all the Isla barleys that come out of Bruichladdich. In fact, last year I remember we did a tasting. It was either last year or the year before, and we did an Isla barley Bruichladdich was like a 7 or an 8-year-old. It was not an old whiskey.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's not that I thought it wouldn't be great. I just was like, oh, I'm sure it'll be good. Like, because it's 7-year-old whiskey. Takes a lot to get, certain individuals excited about whiskey when they get to try crazy stuff. And I was like, I think I was so blown away by it. I bought whatever was left in the province at that time of it because it was that good. And I don't know. I look at it almost in the same way that wineries, when they're making wine, like the best vineyards are the ones where the grapes struggle. And the
Yep.
reason I bring up this analogy is like Islay is a terrible place to grow barley. I mean, if you know how barley, like the 500 sort of like if you drew a 500-kilometer radius circle around Red Deer, that is the best place in the world to grow barley because it's dry most of the year. You've got just enough moisture for the crops to grow, and then lots of sun for them to ripen in. Islay is boggy. It is often wet. There's like terrible winds, and if you don't harvest the barley quick enough, the barnacle geese come in and eat it, and you can't shoot them
Nope.
because they're protected. I think, in my head, I rationalize this as like Islay barley is, it's one of the coolest things that you guys make. And for some reason, I think it's because the barley can't thrive on Islay, and it's a miracle that they can grow it at all.
Yeah, I love this. For us is like, this is what we're about. Islay barley, anything is what we dream of when we go to sleep. Islay barley Octomore is the personification of an ELAC in a bottle. This is 100% Islay grown barley, all from Octomore Farm, just down the road, 2 miles less down the road, just south of Bruichladdich Distillery. It gets battered and bruised by the winds. It's an aggressive climate coming off the coast. It's just salt water smashing into it daily. But then it's treated so well and distilled very beautifully and lightly and put in these casks and peated to an absurd amount. This is, again, the personification of the island in a bottle, and it's beautiful. It's always gonna be one of my favorite things in the world. You're gonna get those real salinic, salty maritime notes on it. This is like when you walk down the road on Islay. If you walk from the town of Port Charlotte to the town of Bruichladdich, this is where gates start to rust faster because of the salt air. Like this is where you taste the salt on your lips as you're walking down the kind of the path, the new boardwalk that exists there over the past 2 years. And in this whiskey, you get a lot of salinity, a lot of sweetness. You get the sunshine on Islay. You get everything that kind of like embodies the island itself. It is a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful whiskey. It is higher ppm, so I think this one's 214 and change, 214.2, I believe, if I'm remembering that correctly, but I don't have a bottle in front of me. It's something that's absolutely beautiful, and it's one that you need to kind of take your time in, and then again lick your lips, and you're going to get a lot of that salinity, and it's something that I'm really excited about.
And they went with a khaki color scheme on this one.
There you go. There's the khaki color scheme.
Yeah. This is so salty. Like this is one of the saltiest Octomores I can remember trying. Like salted caramel, salted Dutch licorice. And it's kind of unruly would be my best way of describing this one. I mean, this makes the 14.1 seem somehow tame by comparison.
Yeah. This is a lot higher ppm. Again, the wine influence on this is just a bit. Like it's second fill French wine cask or second fill wine cask, and then first fill ex-American bourbon. So it is just a little bit in its second fill wine cask. So it's not going to be as aggressive as the two, which is a showcase of wine. But this again, like when you say that's sort of like that Dutch salted licorice and things like that, it's one of my favorite things about true Islay produced whiskeys. Ones that have spent their entire life there, from grain to glass on the island, from being grown there and matured there. That's when you're really going to get the essence of what an Islay whiskey is. Most Islay whiskeys only spend a week on the island, right? It's distilled there. That's it. The barley comes in from wherever, it's distilled there, and then it's sent off down in a tanker truck to do the rest of its life, matured and then bottled somewhere else outside of Glasgow or Edinburgh. Everything from the seed being planted in the ground by James Brown, who's the farmer of Octomore Farms, to it being brought up and distilled and matured and bottled on Islay. It happens with this wind crashing off it, and that salinity is just beautiful. It's one of my favorite things in the entire world. It's the Islay barley of Bruichladdich. It's the Port Charlotte Islay barley. It's the 0.3 series of Octomore. Anything that is unapologetically ELAC is what I absolutely love from our producer here.
Kurt, your turn to speak up first about this one.
Loves it. It's like kind of oat cakes, and it's a little more minerally, a little more candy kind of tones behind it and stuff. I like it. I like the naked kind of nature of it. I like that it's sweet. A little bit of like oyster liquor on the palate too, like that. Maybe that's that brininess you guys are getting. There's a little bit of a seaside-y sort of note to me there too. Yeah, it's pretty. Despite it being massive, this is where my heart lies with the Octomore spirit, with Port Charlotte spirit, and with the Bruichladdich spirit. The DNA shows through all of them. They're just kind of in different EQs, sort of in a way.
Yeah,
I love this. I think it's beautiful.
I love that. That's a great explanation of it. Yeah, it's absolutely beautiful.
Sammy, this one's for you. Like wasabi snow peas. I'm getting that on this one. I didn't get it on the previous ones. But also like those seaweed wafers, which are, I think, an acquired taste, I would assume. There's times when I crave them, but what are you going to do? Harmony, what are your thoughts on this one?
Like sweet, creamy stone fruits on porridge, with that nice kind of briny smoke to it. It's incredibly salty, like my lips feel dry just drinking it. And funny enough, reminds me again of like baking gone bad, where I've oversalted things. But it's really nice. I like the richness of it, and the sweetness is just, it's great. It's very barley forward as well, which I didn't expect as much compared to like knowing what I should expect from 0.1. Yeah, the being so grain forward, that sweet barley, it's really nice.
Yeah, there's a big salted caramel thing, and it reminds me like there's times and places when I want to have salted caramel ice cream, and then there's times where like you have salt, like it's like a small producer, and it's just so salty that it's like not edible. And this is sort of somewhere in between those two, but it's whiskey, so it doesn't matter. But yeah, I really dig that. All right, time for the speed round, guys. So you might as well all leave your mics open. So Reed, we're gonna let you off the hook for the next couple minutes or 10 minutes, depending on how stuck in the peat we get on this. But guys, back to Laddie Classic. Harmony, I'm going to start with you. First thoughts on Laddie Classic after 7 whiskeys.
Oh, just it's so creamy and rich smelling. It just it's incredible. I just want it back.
Reed was another pull. Kurt.
Really creamy, like Harmony said, I agree. Roman nougat candies, that like marshmallowy kind of stuff with a little bits of jujube in it, kind of the chewy stuff.
Jujubes for sure.
It's even prettier than when we first cracked it. I think the cereal seems a little bit tamer now, a little bit more vanilla up front and everything. It just seems to be a lot softer, and it's absolutely gorgeous. I love this whiskey. We should have Sammy here too for a sec.
Sammy, do you want to give speed round comments? Thumbs up or thumbs down? Can I? I'll just ask him to unmute. Sammy, if you want to unmute, you can share your thoughts.
Yeah, for me, it's like a crème brûlée.
Yeah.
Crème brûlée.
That's why I fell in love with Laddie.
And this is not the whiskey that put you to sleep on the boat to Corey Vrecken.
No, that was a Corey Vrecken.
That was Corey Vrecken. So Reed, before you talked about breweries and how lagers are the hardest beer to make, and I'm going to one up you on this. Actually, proper West Coast style IPAs are the hardest beer to make. And my staff will vouch for this. because like I still can't find the perfect West Coast IPA. And I'm worried Eli thinks he'll lose his job if he doesn't find it for me, which is probably not entirely off the mark, but it's a little bit off the mark.
That
Regardless,
West Coast bias out there.
yeah, but here's the thing. There's a reason why I love that style. This is the closest thing I've had to whiskey that is like that, where I would be happy to just come home and have a glass of this. And what I like about it is I don't have to think about it. And for me, that's like a high compliment. Like this is tasty. I don't have to think about it. It's just got a great balance to it. So, man, for core entry level whiskey, this is one of the best ones out there. Full stop.
Thank you. We love hearing that because it's one that gets looked over a lot because like people know us as this progressive distillery that does a lot of crazy shit, from heavily peated things to wine casks from first growth Bordeaux to whatever it is. They know we do biodynamic whiskeys. We made a rye on Isla. Like we do weird things. And that's sort of like, it got to a point where people just expected that from us a lot of the time. And this is a nice way to kind of like bring it back down and then kind of level everybody back out again and go, listen, Classic Laddie is, sure, the house style, always going to change, but it still has those notes of uniqueness and progressiveness and cool wine casks and cool barley types and cool regional stuff. And it's just like, it's a snapshot of everything we do, but just like put right into glass for you. And it's a beautiful golden dram. And it's, yeah, I love it. I love the fact that you guys have a respect for the Classic Laddie, because it's one of those ones that for us, people look at us and they ask for the big stuff. They ask for the weird stuff. They ask for the crazy things we've done in the past. And we've always been preaching to them like, hey, take a second step back and look at Classic Laddie and you're going to find everything you're looking for. It's been there the entire time, right?
I think that's kind of a little too modest. I think it's a flex. I think it's like we can strip away everything and look how much better we are than you. And we give you full disclosure on everything that goes into it. We're telling you it's bloody young. And you know what? Some of the industry's doing 46, we'll do 50.
Yeah.
Like, it's cheeky.
I was just about to say, and
I agree.
It's a middle finger, because it's like this stuff is great. Full stop. So no, anyway, we've already got stuck in the peat. This is supposed to be the speed round. Who went first last time? Harmony did. Kurt, Black Art. Say something nice, Kurt.
Yeah, the nose is quite pretty. Lots of kind of candied sort of tropical fruits, red licorice, a little bit more spice, a little bit of black licorice in there too, I think. And I'm just gonna leave it at the nose because I'm really loving the nose right now.
Okay,
That's
Sammy.
so funny. I wrote down licorice, fruitcake, red fruits, and suede. Like old
Ooh.
suede.
Mm.
At least it wasn't polyester.
No.
You know, it's funny because now I'm thinking red velvet cake, but Sammy, what do you think?
Well, this one here, I still actually taste, like quite a bit of like a tannin at the end. Yeah. Other than that, the whiskey is nice. I like the nose. This is actually one of the better ever nose. Yeah.
So I like it. I like it more than I did the first time around. I think the only place for me that it's a little tough is the finish, like those tannins, as you were saying, really creep in on the finish. But other than that, I love the flavors on it, and yeah, I think it's good. Okay, Sammy, we're gonna stay with you. Port Charlotte 10. What do you think?
I love that. This is something I quite enjoy. Yeah, and yeah, it still got like the sweetness, creaminess, plus a little bit of smoke.
Okay,
Almost like smoke a creme brulee.
Harmony.
I was gonna say it's kind of got like a dying, like a faint Sharpie note, like a faint marker note.
I was
that tends
for a
to
moment I
stick.
was on pins and needles where you were going with the word dying, but a dying Sharpie. Okay.
It's like a faint marker note with like stone fruit on a it was a whipped cream, but it's like all melted and mixed in with the fruit juices now. So like that sweet creaminess on smoke.
Okay. Reed, that you're probably thinking Sharpie, that's not a compliment, but like
It
my
is.
staff My staff are rationed Sharpies by Connie, our office administrator, because she doesn't want them to lose them or waste them. So I actually think that a Sharpie is kind of like a high compliment from them.
Listen, my partner's a sommelier, and she gives me notes on wine that I would never pick up my entire life. When I tested her when she was doing her everything or studying and whatever, when we're going for dinner, and she's like, "Oh, I like this because of this." There are a lot of tasting notes that she says, and I go, I don't even know what that word is. And it's to me, it doesn't make any sense. But so Sharpie, that's fine. I've heard a lot of weirder ones than that for sure.
Yeah. Cool. Kurt?
Sammy robbed me with those words. It's like a smoked kind of custardy thing. So that's where the creme brulee thing I think he's saying there is. And there's a little bit, I used to work not work, but when I was quite young, I used to help out at a dairy farm that my dad used to go to. And that smell of fresh milk, like unpasteurized, anything, it's got kind of that slightly sour butyric sort of note. There's a bit of that on there. This is my jam all the way. I love it.
It's amazing how faded the smoke is on this. Because for me, it reminds me of Village ice creams, like Two Hills Earl Grey tea ice cream. Like it's just yeah, that's that floral note that Harmony was talking about before. It's sweet, it's creamy. Yeah, it's great. All right, let's keep this rolling. Sammy, you get to go first, I think.
Okay.
No, you went first last time. Kurt, you go first this time. PMC 01. I'm going to ask you to say something nice again.
Yeah, I adore the nose on that right now. It's so much prettier than when we first poured it. It hasn't hit my tongue yet, but the nose on it is stunning. It's all those notes we just talked about there, but it's got like more kind of sour tropical kind of fruits coming up now.
Kurt, you're of the same vintage as I am. Did you make in junior high a leather belt as part of shop class?
Of course I did.
Because this smells like making a leather belt in shop class. Yeah. So anyway,
that's going on the website. That's the new website. Just tasting and nosing descriptions. Leather belt in shop class.
I want to say circa grade 8, but I'm not really sure. Those years all blend together.
So that was what 2008 for you?
Yeah, more like what was it? That was during the first Iraq War, wasn't it?
Like 1990.
They're gonna say first depression.
91 rings a bell for some reason, something like that. Harmony's excited because she wrote Iraq War in her journal. Is that what you wrote down? Yeah.
I wrote leather belt.
You wrote it smells like depleted uranium shells. Is that what you wrote?
I said blackberries, fruit leather, and leather belt.
Blackberries is a good call.
She's
Cool.
editing that. What she actually said was it smells like Andrew's belt, which is just weird how she knew that. But.
It smells like Saddam Hussein bowling in The Big Lebowski's dream. Sammy, what are your thoughts?
I actually like this white Casa, quite a bit. It's actually quite balanced. It's not like too much tannin, not too winey. Yeah, I actually do like the palate too.
Cool. Well, it's good to have a different. I like it. It's very peppery towards the finish, but I'm with Kurt. I think it's grown on me a little bit over the tasting. All right, Harmony 14.1.
I said creamy pears, sugar, and cinnamon oak. That's what I'm getting.
This is the second best nose for me,
It's so good.
which is sort of surprising.
Put that next to the Bruichladdich, and they're so similar. Just one has like smoke on it. Actually, they're very different. I lied.
Sammy, your call. Next one. 14.1.
Yeah, this one to me is like like a poached pear, with like a bit of whipped cream. Yeah,
A bit of blue cheese. I'm with you with the
blue
poached
cheese.
pear, but poached pear with just a little bit of blue cheese. Kurt?
I can kind of see a bunch of those notes you guys were just talking about. I'm getting a little bit of like deep or off or something, like some kind of insect repellent. And again, that sounds like something effective, but it is. I love those kind of.
Or you're just like,
no.
I get insect repellent.
Kerosene and things
I'm not
like
putting that one on the website.
hey, look, there's days where Kurt just Kurt wants space from his wife, so he deets it. Okay, whose turn is it next? I think it's Sammy's again. 14.2.
I actually like this one a little bit better, than the 14.3. Yeah, I found again, it's like a nice, well balanced, whiskey. Still got the poached pear, but with a little bit more wine when you poach the pear.
I'm getting unagi. Like when you get like barbecue eel on top of sushi, I'm getting like an unagi note on this, which to me is kind of cool. So, Bert, I think.
I like that unagi note, like some kind of grilled something with a little bit of barbecue kind of tones to it. There's almost like a sourdough bread starter kind of thing going on there on the nose too. It's a little bit bready now, but not like a soft, easygoing bread, something a little more challenging. Yeah, the palate still doesn't work for me. It's a little bit brimstony, a little bit, I don't know if sulfury is kind of the right way to put it, but like there's something about it that's just not hitting my palate right.
That breadiness is not enough that people pick up on. Like sourdough, brioche, yeasty, like that's. I love when people pick that up because to me that's such a big thing in like younger whiskeys. You get like obviously the grain, but then you get like the fermentation, and that's the part where you start to get those like yeasty notes. It's almost like when champagne's distilled on a lees, like a Bollinger or something, and it's like real brioche and real bready. Like that to me is like I love that. People never say it enough, and to me it's always in my head. So
it gives it a little bit of a boozy swagger too. That's kind of cheeky.
yeah.
I'm the anti, like I love brioche, but I'm the anti kind of brioche style champagne guy. I don't know
what. I'm so pro brioche champagne. Yeah.
I find it gives me heartburn. And like Dom is like the worst offender for that. Like it's so toasty and it's so kind of like that brioche, like it fights me on the way down. But anyway, Harmony, 14.3. You want to kick us off?
Sure. It's smoked porridge, salted butterscotch, more smoke, like you're now burning the butterscotch. And then just like that fresh vanilla, and a little bit of like that saline, coastal saline salts. Again, you get 2 kinds of salt.
So salty. It reminds me, Glenmorangie House, Glenmorangie back in the day. This is, I think, before Moët Hennessy, or maybe it was after, I don't know. But they used to send Ardbeg malt to Glenmorangie House, and they would make dinner rolls with part of the flour from Ardbeg, like malted smoked barley.
Man, we have an Octomore sourdough made by a gentleman named Craig in Scotland. It's unbelievable.
Is it Craig Dennis?
No. He works. He is like a chef in Glasgow, but he comes to Isla for all the academies and all of this stuff. He does big like pop-ups, and he's phenomenal chef. But he does Octomore sourdough, and it's this black dough, beautiful, smoky, sweet with like a Port Charlotte butter. It's one of the greatest things in the entire world. This is the highlight of my year. The only reason I'm still working for this company is so I can eat this sourdough every year.
So actually a customer of ours, Dr. Jerry, has been like negotiating with Ardbeg to send him a bag of peated malt simply so he can try to make Ardbeg buns at home.
Love it.
But yeah, this reminds me of like a really good dinner roll, but if it was peated and a little bit salty with, like you said, the right butter on there. It's got to have tons of fat, a little bit of sweetness to it. I don't know, maybe even you toast the bun with a bit of butter on it and then a little bit of foie gras on top.
Oof, bougie,
but
You and your foie gras.
It's true. I love foie
gras.
Yeah,
it's the best. So
it is. It's also the worst, but it's the best. So Evan did not set up a poll, and we've been chatting too much for me to create a poll. So what I would ask is if people want to put their favorites in the chat, Your votes will be counted. But in the interim, I'm going to start with Sammy. Do you want to give us your two favorites tonight? What were your two favorites from the lineup?
I like the Port Charlotte PMC, and again go back to the Classic Laddie.
Port Charlotte. Sammy, I love that you've got your own path. You don't care what Kurt, Harmony, or I've said. So kudos to you for being an individual.
I am an Octomore guy. I actually got a lot of Octomore. I don't actually don't have a
And
lot
you
of
didn't
Port
pick
Charlotte.
an Octomore.
Yeah.
Stuff. Okay.
Sammy blazes his own trail. Russell's a Pete freak. I can see that.
So Harmony, what would you pick? Your top two tonight.
Classic Laddie all the way. I can't. It's almost like it's definitely top 5 of all time whiskeys. Like, I absolutely love it. And it's a toss up for me between the Port Charlotte and the Octomore 14.1. I think they're both great. Time and a place for both.
Okay. Cool. Kurt?
Yeah. Just a quick qualifier. I adore Bruichladdich. These folks treated me like gold from the very first time I ever spoke to them. So even the duds in a Bruichladdich range, I still want to try. Duds to me, Andrew can attest to this. When we had walls full of Bruichladdich in this city, like they would have 40 different expressions on the shelf at a given time.
It was a problem for a while. It was
Always fun. You never knew what you were getting.
It's a problem for me currently because people DM me all the time and say, "Hey, can I get this?" I go, "No, we haven't made it in 20 years. Like, I don't know. Like, hey, can I get this?" And I say, "Talk to Andrew. He probably has a guy."
And then my staff usually judge whether or not to forward the email to me or not, which is a
Yeah,
wise
it all comes from me. I go, "Talk to Andrew Ferguson. He can get it for you."
Yeah.
He knows a guy that knows a guy.
Yeah. Kurt, so
yeah.
so you started by
I love Bruichladdich
cramming
in
the
general.
faint praise.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I feel like he's gonna take a downturn real quick here.
Despite the ones that I don't love, it doesn't even matter. So for me, number 2 is the Port Charlotte 10, which I think would normally be my number 1. And number 1 was the Classic Laddie. This is a brilliant thing of it. Those two whiskeys are just absolute classics for me. And number 3 behind it would be the 14.1. So just the kind of flagship in all 3 ranges was my favorite.
I'm going to buck the trend here. I'm staying Classic Laddie number 1. I'm going to go 14.1 number 2, and then if I got a third vote, it would be the Port Charlotte 10. Although I'm torn because I really like the 14.32, but I can't see like if the bottles were put in front of me, I don't think I would have reached for it first. But
mine kind of fell apart in the glass. I don't know if yours did too.
Which
so
one?
I know Reed's been there. I know Andrew's been there. Maybe a couple others. Sammy probably has too. If you've been at the distillery with that open top ton that Reed was talking about, when they're sparging, when they're putting like hot water over that milled barley, that like trying to get all that sugary water out of it, when it's a heavily peated grain, it's dead on accurate what Harmony said. It's like that smoked porridge kind of thing. The 14.3 is so smoky, porridgey kind of to me. It's crazy now with the glass. I didn't get that the first time around. Cool whiskey though.
Yeah.
So Reed, we didn't ask you. You know, you don't have all of them in front of you tonight, but if you had to pick your two favorites based on what you know, having tried them before, what would you have picked?
I'm a big Classic Laddie guy. It's my daily kind of that's my daily drinker. Yeah, and you know what? I might be along the lines of the Kurt here. The Classic Aioli is playing. I'm going Classic Laddie, I'm going Port Charlotte 10, and then I might switch up a little bit and go 14.3 as the Octomore. I'm a big like barley forward guy. I'm a big fan of the grain. I'm a big fan of the process. I like to see that shine through. So a lot of my favorite expressions we make, regardless, are younger or more straightforward. They're more pointed, I guess, as like this is what we are. So I think if we had a nice like unpeated Isla barley, or we had something kind of like a beer barley or a biodynamic, if we could have got that over to Canada at any point, it would have been really cool. But yeah, the Classic Laddie 10, and then the 14.3. That's in my order.
So speaking of really cool, Reed, you know what would be really cool? We've done 3 Bruichladdich casts for KWM. We
Yeah.
haven't done Port Charlotte yet.
Okay.
So,
Have you talked to somebody about it, or you're looking to talk to somebody about it?
well, you know, put in a good word for us. I mean, we can start nudging ourselves, but I mean, you know, usually it plays out like this. Like we'll ask about a Bruichladdich, 6 months later we'll get samples. A year later the whiskey will show up. We'll sell out of it
Yeah.
in a couple of months, and then we wait a year and we start the process all over again. It's been roughly a year. I think we're ready to start the process all over again. And you know, like a Port Charlotte would be cool. Just
If
saying.
you're cool with like a younger cask,
Yeah. Well, like
do you have a
a
problem with that? Because a lot
young
of
bourbon
the
Port
older
Charlotte.
stock we've tried to get back from people because we don't have a lot of older stock. A younger cask we can work on.
We're you know, we just want good. We don't care how
That's
old it is.
yeah.
So, and the thing about peat is peat allows you to bottle things at a younger age. It makes things
Yep.
more interesting. And in fact, it's so, you know, just throwing it out there, like, you know, the humble folk at KWM would love to bottle a Port Charlotte. So
Listen, you guys have like it's basically like a wanted poster of you on the wall in the offices of Bruichladdich when it comes to Canada and the whiskey market, because the Canadian whiskey market is all over the place, obviously, and then depending whether it's LCBO, SAQ, NSLC, BCLDB, whatever, and then Alberta, you guys are the wild, wild west, and Andrew, you're the sheriff. So when I go into Scotland and have conversations about Canada and what we're getting over there, your name comes up a lot. So I think you'll be fine. We'll have a conversation and we'll figure it out.
sounds good. Well, I like the sound of that, and we're patient, I guess, is the other portion to that.
Okay,
So,
cool.
well, Reed, I want to thank you for staying up with us. I know it's getting close to 11 p.m. where you are tonight, and we didn't send you the samples you didn't have. So I'm like,
Listen, it's fine. You should have expected me to have it. This is my bad. I should have just like been prepared.
we didn't factor in the vagaries of Canada not being a free trade zone.
That's fine. Do you guys, I have a question. Do you guys hang out now and people turn their cameras on and talk and ask questions and hang out and just drink together, or do you just all just leave?
To be totally honest with you, like we all just leave.
Oh,
Mainly because like I want to go like have a dram and watch TV before I fall asleep.
you could
But
do that. I thought Russell was gonna have something to say, or Kevin looked like he wanted to say something for a long
they
period
can
of time.
type
So.
it out in the chat. I think we've settled into a nice little groove here where we take care of business. We have a tasting, you know, at
Great.
most it lasts 2 hours.
Reed,
And then,
I'll stay up and have a drink with you.
I'll
but-
stay and have a drink if anybody wants to stay and
Okay.
ask any questions, hang
all right,
out,
well,
tell some jokes.
Reed, this is an interesting concept. I'm not promising I'll stay around, but I will stop.
You don't have to. Just take it off Facebook. Yeah, don't let.
Take it-
We're
we'll
gonna
take it
talk
off
so
the
many
loop.
things about you.
Oh yeah,
So-
it's gonna be a shit show.
For sure. So anyway, this is just the good night from the live stream and the recording. And a big thank you again to Reed for agreeing to do this. And I'm going to kill the recording